Okay, we're up to Siman Kuf Yud Ches. We're jumping a little bit ahead. Siman Kuf Yud Ches. If Aleph, these are the Dinei Hachana, the Seder. So these are all the halachas that have to do with the Seder. And then maybe when we finish, if we have time of everything we have to do for the night of the Pesach, we'll go back and we'll do a little bit more. But for now, we're going to start over here. We'll see how we go. Okay, Sif Aleph. Yahadir achar yayin yafel lemitzvahs arba koises. You should try your best to find better wine or good wine for the Seder more than other times. The im yesh benimtza yayin adam yafek lava. Now, let's say you have and you find red wine that's just as good as white wine. So it used to be that white wine was preferred and better. I don't know if it's still the same today, but it used to be that way. So therefore, if you found red wine that would be just as good, and v'gamu kosher kamei alavan, and also in its kashrus, it's up to the same level. So mitzvah boy yoser mibalav. So then we have a preference on the night of Pesach to use red wine over white wine. Now, in other Yom Tovim, by the way, we say that if the red wine is better than the white wine, then you should use the red wine. But here we're saying is that if it's even equal to the white wine, we already prefer red. Why do we prefer red? So number one, Shenemar, there's a pasuk. It says, Al Teida Yayin Kis Adam. This is a pasuk from Mishli, where Shlomo HaMelech says, don't look at the wine which is red, but he refers to the wine as red. So from here we see that red wine has a certain preference. And then, which is mashma shachashivutze shel yayin hu kishu adam. It's mashma from the way he describes it that when is wine sort of praised, when is it valuable, when it's red. So number one, based on a pasuk. Number two, va'oid lefi sheyesh bei zecher ledam. Another reason is it reminds us about the dam of that the Yidden were in Mitzrayim. Which dam? Shahaya pare sheichet yalde b'nei Yisrael. It's I guess you could say like a negative dam, which is that there was the with Pare at a certain point when he had whatever the reason was. The Medrash says he wanted to bathe in the dam of babies to heal his whatever tzonas, whatever he had. So he used to do that. But so to recognize this terrible Gzeda that was against the Yidden, which had to do with red, so we do the same thing as well. Now, by the way, there's different types of red wine and white wine also. There's two types of white wine. There's white wine and then there's like, let's say, rosé. So some white wines are white only because they didn't put in the, it's like they didn't put in the skin, so it has like it's a tinge, a reddish tinge, but it's kind of white. So that's considered red wine. So if someone wants to make kiddush on malvasia, whatever they call it, it's like a red tinge. It's not like dark red wine or rosés. So those are considered red. It's the white wine, which is real white, which is from different type of grape. But either way, but today, as we said, red is just as chashuv. But here we see two reasons why we want to do this. Number one, based on a pasuk, it seems like there's a preference, something to wine, to red wine, even though white wine may have been better in those days. And number two is we want it to be a zecher ledam. Now, bedinois, and here's an interesting thing. Bedinois shall umeis tipshin. He says there were countries where the people that lived there were very foolish people, uschalim, and they were very, they were idiots, I guess. And what they would do is, they would make blood libels, right? And this was a very common thing. Unfortunately, maybe particularly even around Pesach time specifically. So therefore, nibnu melikach yayin adaim lePesach. So then people would dafka not use red wine, even though it had benefits like we mentioned, because it was pashut sakanas the fascist type of thing. Now the Alter Rebbe says nowadays, this is what the Alter Rebbe was saying, nowadays that they live the Alter was saying nowadays that we do live in such environments, so it's preferred not to use, maybe not to use red. But today, obviously, we do use red. And by the way, blood libels happened even till the 1900s. There's a famous Bayless blood libel and other ones that were in the 1800s already, and 1900s. So not common, but things definitely did. And obviously, we don't want to ever go back to that. So that's something that we do. And the Rebbe Rashab actually one year asked for white wine. Apparently, maybe even more than one year asked for white wine too. So either way, the Kitzur for white, yeah. But generally, we do red. There's a preference to have red. There's actually some stories of the Rebbe. It's interesting. We know this. Did we do Kiddush yet in Hilchos Shabbos? I don't know. We did, right? Yeah. So we spoke about it. So I think so. That there is an Indian to do dafke wine for Kiddush, for Havdalah, for everything, like schoolers for different things. But the Rebbe actually told someone that lost their eyesight that they should dafke make on red wine. I don't know. I don't know that I've seen where it mentions in other places specifically red wine. I think it was from the Rebbe, that Nakuda. But either way, there is something about red in general we try to do. So yeah, you had a question?
Yeah. So it seems like the pasuk is like, okay, like barely much use red wine, and then most say, but it's not. I guess the best thing to remember, but okay, whatever. But also, I'll pick up all red is not the best color. Like it's not such a good thing to do. Like the color itself, you gotta be used red wine. If it's a lot through, pretty much a lot based on the color.
Well, I don't know if that's accurate. I'm not a Kabbalist, number one, and I
I'm
also
not
don't
that
know
certain.
that Al Pi Kabbalah. There's
It's not the color.
so I don't know. Edom sometimes refers to like there's manim of Edom, or like we mentioned, we were talking about the making kiddush between 6 and 7. That over there it had to do with the mazel of Edom. So I don't know if it's mamish the color red itself. Maybe red could be dam, passion, not such a good thing.
You also like
Averes are called red. It says that the Hashem says, we say it in Slichas, that if your Averes are red, then Hashem will make it white like snow and make it pure. So maybe there's something to it, but I don't know.
so the kula and all that.
Right. I don't know. Ich weiß nicht, and that's why, by the way, we say that it's similar to the dam of what's it called, of the kids. So I don't know if it's okay. Either way, yeah. As I state.
This is the halakha you should, is that's all because Kabbalah though you should do this and this. But he says that what you should do is you should follow the Lashon Hara. Even if all people should do like the opposite.
So no, in Shulchan Aruch Daf we wouldn't really bring the two of those. No, what we say is that anytime if there's no machlekes between halacha and Kabbalah, we follow Kabbalah. So there are certain things we do al pi Kabbalah. If there's a halacha that says differently, then we would follow the halacha. That's right. But either way, right. So that's another because I don't want to get too detailed because I don't think the color red is that significant in that way. Meaning, it could be it's a negative thing, but if you're making a bracha and it's wine and that's the chashuvas of wine and it represents certain things, then obviously Kabbalah wouldn't necessarily have anything. Okay, yeah. You had a question also? Or that was it.
What? No.
Okay. Sit base. Okay, fine. So moving along from there, when it comes to the first dipping that we do during the Seder, we'll talk more about obviously the Pesach Seder things. We're just talking about ingredients and setting up now and things like that. So to prepare for the first dipping, Shehu Karpas, which is what we call Karpas. So Noegin Harbe Likach Petrozilia. A lot of people take Petrozilia, which is basically parsley. So, right? So parsley, now if you look at the bottom where it says Aleph, it says the karpas for the dipping of karpas, minagenu, our minig is the kachas batza. We use onion or tepuach adama or a potato. Now, the times of the Alter Rebbe, they didn't have a lot of different salads or things like lettuces or things like that. So they would use things that were very common, and part of that was onions and potatoes. But that's what became the minig regardless. So that's what we use. The Rebbe used to use the onion, but some people use potatoes as well. Now, the Taiv Yaser, the best thing to do, okay, so that's it, really for us and the story. But there's more of the halacha, so let's see what he says. And it's good to know, I guess, in case if you ever go on Mitzrayim somewhere and you don't have access to certain things, it's good to know. So the Taiv Yaser, the kacha celery. Better than parsley, one step up would be celery. Sheyeshle tam toiv keshuchai, because when it's raw, it tastes good as well. You can eat it raw, I guess, also. Vehamufchar. Who lakachas snain? 1 second. The best thing to do would be to use a radish. Now, if you look at Bays on the bottom, it says our minig is we do not eat radishes during Pesach, which is a shame because that could have been another food, right? We're so limited in what foods we could eat. And the story goes that the Rebbe Rashab once used to go around to the yeshivas and look around at the Bachram when they were doing the Seder. The Rebbe also used to go to different places, sometimes Machmatana, sometimes Hadar Torah. So, but over here, he went into the yeshiva and he saw that they had on the table they had some sort of celery over there. They had some sort of radishes over there, and the Rebbe said it was like a salad, I think, of some sort. And he basically said, the Rebbe Rashab said that don't you know that we don't use radishes, and the Tzemach Tzedek basically said it's usher to eat them on Pesach, and he didn't give a reason. And that's a strong statement to say he didn't give a reason, because when he gives a reason, then you could answer the reason. Sometimes things change. Like people argue about different minhagim in Chabad, and they say, well, those minhagim don't apply anymore. And sometimes it's true, but if you don't have a reason, there's nothing to argue about. So that was it. So either way, the point is we don't have radishes on Pesach. Now, Rabbeinu Kasad Alter Rebbe says, the mainly karpas. Let's say you don't have the actual karpas. Karpas is, I think, coriander. So we call karpas the karpas dipping. but it actually refers to a particular vegetable. And the reason why it's called karpas and that vegetable specifically is because samach perach happens to do with how many the Yidden that had to do the avodah there, whatever. Either way, so then the Alter Rebbe says, Hikach yerek achar me'ezed min sheyirtza. Technically, you could use any vegetable. Okay, so we use, obviously, like we mentioned, onion and potatoes. People used also celery and things like that. And technically, you could also use any other vegetable that you want. The only thing is, Alter Rebbe says, it can't be one that you're going to use for maror. Yeah, why is that? Because later on, you're going to make a bracha alachilas maror. Yeah, alachilas maror. You're making a bracha to eat maror, but you already ate maror. You already dipped it in before. So what bracha are you making now? If it's the first time you're eating these vegetables for the night, you can make a special bracha. This is maror. But if you already had those vegetables, you can't make that bracha. So therefore, you could use other vegetables, but it should not be one that you use for that. Another thing also, something else let's leave that for now. Fine. So that's what comes out from there. Siv Gimel. Now what? So that's the karpas. So karpas is going to be from one of those. Now what about the maror? So let's say the maror noyagin likich tamcha. The minig became that we use tamcha. What's tamcha? Chazeres, which is chrein. Yeah, what's chrein? Horseradish. Yeah, that's the minig that we have. Kivin. Now why do we do that? Or whatever. That's why we do it, or we do it. Now, because it's very sharp, so so you basically grind it up. It's very hard to take a bite out of a grain. Yeah, go straight to your brain. So you break it up into pieces. But you do have to be careful that you don't take away the what do you call it completely. So just now my mother was posting, it must have came from another group that she's on, so for the benefit of everyone she posted this whole thing, and someone came up with an idea that instead of using a grater that usually the metal comes in contact with too much and it makes it less, someone was using a meat grinder, and apparently when they used a meat grinder, mamish was sharp all the way straight up, whatever. So, okay, it's a more competition. As they say, first world problems, right? I don't know if you have to retain that it has to go and make you cry and everything like that. I don't know if that's the whole thing. It does have to be sharp, which in that case, it's sharp, as long as it's sharp. But you want to make sure that it's not nothing. So for people that can't handle it and they leave it out too much, you still have to taste the sharpness to some degree. Now, now, according to the Kitzur, he says there are those who grind it when they come home from shul. And this way, I guess the assumption would be that it's going to be the sharpest that it could be, and therefore there's a benefit to doing it that way. And again, he says, then he says, he says, look, earlier, we're over there, over there, that's the halachis of Shabbos. Yes, over there he says that if you're going to do this, or the halachis of Yom Tiv, so you have to do it with the shina. Shabbos you can't do it, but a Yom Tiv, if you're doing it, you have to do it with the shina because technically it could have been done before. What?
If you have to look on the progress, word voucher, so like government, yes, the fire, then skip the one.
What does it say by you?
Well, Yichlin,
Oh, so no, it's out of order. So I said it. I said you could grind it with a ribaisen. Ribaisen, eisen is like a metal. It's a grater, a grater. He's just said. Wait, let me just finish 1 second. So according to the Kitzur, you do it when you come home, but you have to do it with the shinoi because it's Yom Tif and you could have done it before. But l'das Rabbeinu, according to Alter Rebbe, also. According to Alter Rebbe, he doesn't want you to do this on Yom Tif to use a grater. Even with a shinoi. And the reason is, according to Alter Rebbe, apparently, because when they do it, they do more than what you need. And you're not on Yom Tif, you're not allowed to do it a malacha that's einei tzricha for today. So because you're going to do more than what you need, so therefore it's enough of a reason not to do it at all. So what would you do? You chop it up into pieces instead of grating it. Now, let me just finish this paragraph. No, but Shabbos asur lefareh. Shabbos, you're not allowed to do it at all because you're not allowed to grate on Shabbos. So you have to do it before, and you cover it over to keep it sharp until at night. Yes. Yeah.
We grind it in a potato cooler.
Yes. Correct.
And then we smush it in so the spiciness.
Correct. And what do you smush it into?
Little jars.
A little jar. Glass jar? Glass jar. This is a typical standard things. That's what most people do. Most people do it inside of a regular blender. Okay, you guys, regular blender. And then but you could also use a handheld one, by the way, which I've done when I went to Pesach in random places.
Any potato cooklers?
You could use it. It's a handheld one. It does the same thing. It's just harder. Okay. Now, so those are some of your options. Now, to use basically chreib, which is horseradish. Aval yoser toiv, but the best thing to use is lakachas chazeres shehi chasa. The best thing is actually lettuce, what we call iceberg lettuce or something like that. Salat. I feel the k'neisa b'dam yikar, even if it's going to cost you a lot. Now, why is this better? So it's not bitter. You ever have salads? Salads are not so bitter. They do have when you buy like there's certain ones that are more bitter than others, and you could taste it's bitter. But apparently, if you leave it in the ground long enough, it actually becomes more and more bitter as it stays in the ground. The regular lettuce that we know of. And therefore, it's actually more similar to what the Yidden went through. Because in the beginning, everything was nice. Pare came, he volunteered with them. It was like national service. Everyone, they sang songs, they had flags. It was a wonderful thing. But later on, it got more and more strict for the Yidden and more challenging, and everyone left until eventually it was just them. So what mirrors that more? Lettuce. Because if you leave it in the beginning, it's okay. But if you leave it in the ground longer, it becomes more bitter and less edible. And therefore, this is actually a better thing to use. Now, what happened? Times of the Alter Rebbe, they didn't have that. Yeah, times of the Alter Rebbe, they didn't have different types of vegetables. So they didn't have these lettuces around. It wasn't something that they could survive in the Russian winters and Bechlal, they didn't have it. So what would they do? They use chreib, because that's something, it's a root vegetable, it's more accessible. But now that we are here, and we do have lettuce, so we do lettuce, but we don't get rid of the chreib. Once it became a minig that this is what we do, it sticks with us, and we keep it, and we don't get rid of it. So that's the reason why, even though now we do have chazeres, we do have proper lettuce, but nevertheless, we're still going to use it, and we don't get rid of it after that. Now, as we'll see in a second. Now, so that's why it's better. And this happens to be easier to eat also. And v'nikris mara, and it's also called mara. The fish because if you leave it in the ground, like we said, long enough, the stem becomes bitter. The stem becomes bitter, so therefore it's mara. Even though when you eat it, it's not bitter. Hopefully, I mean, some of them are a little bit more, like I said, different, brands or whatever, different styles, the colors, purple ones, whatever. But that doesn't matter. The fact is that if it stayed long enough, the stem would become bitter. The yetzingam belana. You could also use another thing, which is hanikres vermuta. It's called verm. Verm means worm, so it's called it's called wormwood. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's another type of thing. Now, you could also use ulshin, which are endives, whatever that is, and you could also use charcharvina. Which is a date ivy, which I also don't know what it is. And over there, no, date ivy. And he writes, these are fruits that anyways were not common in in those countries, so therefore he doesn't really mention it in detail, but those are options. Now, if you take a look in the bottom Gimel, so here you have from the Rebbe writes in the Agada that minogeno lika chazeres v'tamcha shneim. Our minig is we take both of them. We take this lettuce and we also take the chrein as well. The horseradish, hein l'marar ve'hein l'koirech. And we use that for both. And what we do is, like we said, we wrap it up, whatever we do, after as well. We're not worried that the lettuce might make the chrein more palatable, more tasty. We don't really, that's not our concern. The only thing is that now that you don't have a root vegetable, so you have to check it for bugs because it's salad. So that's something that becomes one of the jobs becomes one of the jobs we do on the day before the what do you call it? We search it for bugs. But that's okay. We'll pause here and we'll continue tomorrow session.